I was wearing the blue dress my late husband had bought me for our 40th anniversary. I remember thinking that morning, standing in front of the mirror in our bedroom, the one we'd shared for 38 years before he passed, that I looked almost like myself again. Almost. My granddaughter's convocation was at 2 o'clock. The University of Victoria Faculty of Law. 3 years of watching her study at my kitchen table over the holidays. 3 years of sending care packages to her apartment in Victoria. 3 years of being the one person in this family she could call at midnight when the anxiety got bad. I had earned that front row seat. I'd taken the ferry from Sawasan the night before and stayed at the hotel on Douglas Street, the same one my husband and I had always used when we visited the island. I kept the room on his side of the bed empty. Force of habit, I suppose. Some habits take longer to break than others. My granddaughter's mother, my daughter-in-law, was flying in from Calgary with my son, 42 years old, senior partner at his firm, and still capable of making me feel like a stranger in my own family when he walked into a room. We had never been easy with each other, not since he married her. That's not blame. That's just what happened. The woman who had been helping me manage the house for 11 years. I'll call her my housekeeper, though that word never felt right for what she was, had driven me to the ferry herself and insisted on coming along. She was 67, small and quietly fierce. With white hair she kept in a knot at the back of her head, and a way of watching people that made them slightly uncomfortable without knowing why. She had worked for my husband's family before she worked for me. She knew where the bodies were buried, metaphorically speaking. She was the kind of person you stop noticing after a while, the way you stop noticing your own heartbeat. You only notice when something goes wrong. She had driven up from the ferry terminal herself that morning in her own car. She had her own room at the hotel, I'd insisted on that, and she was waiting in the lobby when I came down for breakfast. She looked at me in that way she had, where her eyes went somewhere beyond my face, assessing something I couldn't see. "You slept," she said. "A little." "Good." She poured me coffee without being asked. We didn't talk much over breakfast. We never needed to. The convocation ceremony was at the University Center. We arrived early enough to find good seats. My granddaughter had texted me the seat numbers she'd reserved in the family section, and my housekeeper and I made our way there while the hall filled up around us. My son and his wife arrived 20 minutes later, my daughter-in-law in a white linen blazer that she had clearly bought for the occasion, my son with his phone already in his hand. He kissed my cheek. She kissed the air beside mine. We watched the ceremony together, the four of us in a row, and when my granddaughter walked across that stage in her hood and gown and turned to find my face in the crowd, I felt something unlock in my chest that I hadn't known was locked. She was the best of this family. She had always been the best of us. Afterward, there was a reception in one of the buildings across the courtyard. Students and families, wine and sparkling water, round tables with little potted succulent centerpieces. My granddaughter was surrounded immediately by classmates and professors. I hung back and let her have that. She would find me when she was ready. My housekeeper had stepped away to find the washroom. My son and his wife were across the room speaking to someone I didn't recognize. I was standing near the edge of the crowd with a glass of sparkling water, watching my granddaughter laugh at something her friend had said when my housekeeper reappeared at my elbow and said quietly into my ear, "Come with me. Right now, don't ask me why yet." I turned to look at her. Her face was still. Not alarmed exactly, resolved. I set my glass down on the nearest table and followed her. She led me through a side corridor, past a row of framed photographs of graduating classes going back decades, and stopped in front of a partially open door that led into what appeared to be a small office. Dark, unused, the blinds half drawn. She guided me inside. She didn't close the door all the way. "What is this?" I said. She held up one finger. She tilted her head toward the wall. And then I heard them. My son's voice, low and careful the way it gets when he thinks he's being strategic. My daughter-in-law's voice, faster, more impatient. They were in the corridor on the other side of the wall. There must have been a connecting hallway, and they had clearly thought they were alone. "She's not going to live forever," my daughter-in-law said. My son said something I couldn't quite catch. That's not what I'm saying, she said. I'm saying we need to get ahead of it. The house alone. Do you know what property like that is going to be worth when it comes time? And she has no idea what she's sitting on. I heard my son say something about a trust. The trust is the problem, she said. If she puts it in a trust the way that financial planner suggested, we lose control of the timeline completely. We need her to keep it in her name. We need her to keep us as the sole beneficiaries and not start adding in. And here her voice dropped, and I missed the next few words, and then I heard her say, clearly, and especially not the girl. She has no claim. She's not blood. My granddaughter. She was talking about my granddaughter. She was talking about my granddaughter. My granddaughter who had sat at my kitchen table for 3 years. My granddaughter who called me at midnight. My granddaughter who had just walked across that stage, who is not technically blood. She's my son's stepdaughter from his first marriage, a marriage his current wife has spent 11 years trying to quietly erase from the family record. I stood in that dark office, and I did not move. My housekeeper was standing beside me, and I could feel her there, the solid, certain fact of her, and I focused on that because if I had focused on anything else, I might have walked through that wall. My son said something I couldn't fully hear, something that sounded like a protest, or maybe just a qualification. The kind of thing you say when you want to appear to object without actually objecting. Just talk to her, my daughter-in-law said. She listens to you. She trusts you. Tell her the trust is complicated and expensive to maintain. Tell her whatever you need to tell her. You're her son. There was a pause. You're her son, she said again. And then their voices moved away down the corridor, and there was only the sound of the reception drifting in from the other end of the building, and my own breathing. My housekeeper waited. She always waited. How long have you known? I said. I'd suspected for a while, she said. I heard them on the phone last month, at the house. You were in the garden. I only caught pieces. I wasn't certain until today. Today. I followed them when they stepped out. Today. I followed them when they stepped out. I didn't plan to. I saw how they looked at each other when your granddaughter shook the dean's hand, and I followed. I nodded. I didn't say anything for a moment. I was thinking about the last 6 months. My son's sudden interest in my finances, the questions about my advisor, the casual mentions of simplifying my estate, the suggestion that I might want to review my will before I got, quote, too much older. I had thought he was being thoughtful. I had been so grateful for what I'd thought was thoughtfulness. My daughter-in-law had always been careful with me. Correct. Never warm, but correct. She remembered my birthday. She sent Christmas cards with a personalized note. She had performed the role of devoted daughter-in-law with such consistency that I had stopped examining the performance. That's the thing about a long con. You don't see it because you're not looking. My granddaughter found us 20 minutes later, coming down the same corridor with a friend, laughing about something. She stopped when she saw my face. Gran, what's wrong? Nothing, I said. And then, because she was a lawyer now and she would know a lie when she heard one, I said, nothing that needs to be your problem today. Today is yours. I mean that. She looked at me for a long moment, and then she looked at my housekeeper, who gave the smallest possible nod, and my granddaughter seemed to accept this. Dinner at 7? She said. 7, I said. I'm very proud of you. She squeezed my hand and went back to her friend, and I watched her go, and I thought, not today. Today is yours. I had things to do, but I was in no hurry. I have never been in a hurry when it really mattered. That's something my husband used to say about me, sometimes with exasperation and sometimes with admiration, that when I had made up my mind about something, I got very quiet and very still. And then I moved exactly once. I called my financial advisor the next morning from the hotel room. He had been managing my affairs for 9 years, and I trusted him the way you trust someone who has never given you a reason not to. I told him I wanted to revisit the trust structure we had discussed the previous spring. He was not surprised. He had been recommending it for 2 years. I want my granddaughter included, I said, as a primary beneficiary, not secondary. I want that to be the foundation of the whole structure. He walked me through it. It would take a few weeks to formalize. There were documents to sign, a meeting with the estate lawyer he worked with, a woman named something I won't mention here, not Patricia, someone practical and unhurried who asked good questions and did not make me feel rushed. We met at her office in Victoria on the Thursday. My housekeeper came with me and sat in the waiting room and read a novel the entire time. When I came out, she looked up and said, "Done?" I said. We took the ferry home the next afternoon. My son called me 3 days after we returned. He was in good spirits, which usually meant he wanted something. He asked about the ferry, about the hotel, about my granddaughter's plans. Then, after the customary preamble, he said that he and his wife had been thinking and they wanted to sit down with me and my financial advisor just to go over a few things, make sure everything was set up properly, make sure I wasn't paying more than I needed to in fees. I said that sounded fine. I said I had actually just met with my advisor and the estate lawyer and made a few updates. There was a pause. "Oh," he said. "What kind of updates?" "The trust we'd discussed last spring," I said. "I've set it up properly now. Everything's organized." Another pause. I could hear him recalibrating. "And your will?" he said. "Also updated," I said. "It reflects my current wishes." He asked, carefully, whether he was still, "You're provided for," I said. "You and your sister both. I want to be clear about that. I have always intended to be fair to my children." He thanked me. I could hear that the gratitude was real, even if the relief behind it was not quite the kind a son should feel about his mother's will. "Your wife is well," I said. "I wanted you to know that I updated the provisions in a way that reflects what's actually important to me, which includes your daughter." He said, "My daughter." "Your daughter," I said. "Your stepdaughter, who just graduated from law school and who I have watched grow into a person of genuine character. I think your father would have agreed with me." He was quiet for a long time. "Mom," he said finally. "I know," I said. "I didn't." He stopped. "I know," I said. "I didn't." He stopped. "I know," I said again. "I'd like you to think about that. Not because I need an apology, because I'd like you to think about who you are when your wife is driving the car. That's all. I wasn't unkind. I have never found unkindness efficient. But I said what I meant, and he heard it, and we stayed on the phone for another few minutes talking about nothing. And when we hung up, I sat in the kitchen with my hands around a cup of tea and looked out at the garden. My housekeeper was in the backyard. I could see her through the window, pulling something out of the flower bed along the fence. She had been working in that garden nearly as long as she had worked for me. She knew where everything was planted, what needed cutting back, what had a tendency to choke out everything around it if you let it go. I went to the back door. "Come in when you're ready," I said. "I'll put the kettle on." She looked up. She saw something in my face, and she nodded. When she came inside, I told her that I had included her in the updated documents. Not the trust, that's for family, but the will. There was a specific provision. I told her the number. She sat down very carefully in the kitchen chair, the way someone sits when they are suddenly aware that their legs may not hold them. "You didn't have to do that," she said. "I know," I said. "I wanted to. You have given 11 years of your life to this house and to me, and you did it with a kind of integrity that I have not always seen from people who share my blood. I am not sentimental about money. I am practical. This is the practical thing." She looked at the table. She blinked several times. "I followed them because I thought you should know," she said. "Not because I know why you did it," I said. "That's exactly why." We drank our tea. Outside the window, the garden was doing what gardens do in May in British Columbia, which is to say it was overgrowing slightly and smelling wonderful and not caring at all about the business of people. My granddaughter called that evening. She was back in Victoria, back at her apartment, already thinking about our tickling applications. She called to thank me for being there, for the dinner, for the whole day. Then she said, in that careful voice she uses when she's about to say something she has decided to say something she has decided to say, "Gran, are you okay? You had a look at the reception. You and—" she hesitated. "You and my dad. You've both had a look since." I thought about lying. I decided against it. Your father and I had a conversation, I said. We're working something out. About the estate stuff, she said. I paused. What do you know about estate stuff? She was quiet for a moment. Stepmom made a comment at Christmas about the house. About the house. Timing. I didn't say anything because I didn't want to be the person who said anything. You should have told me, I said. I know, she said. I know, she said. I'm telling you now. I know you are. I looked out the kitchen window again. The light was going. The garden was going to shadow. Everything has been taken care of. That's what I want you to hear. Everything is taken care of, and you are included in that, and you have always been included in my definition of this family, whatever anyone else may have implied. She didn't say anything for a moment. I didn't know if you... She started. I do, I said. I always have. I heard her take a breath. Okay, she said. Okay. We talked for another half hour about articling applications and her apartment and a hiking trip she was planning with a friend to the Sunshine Coast. Regular things. Good things. The kind of things I want to hear about. After we hung up, I sat for a long time in the quiet. My husband used to say that the hardest thing about getting older is learning to tell the difference between the people who love you and the people who love what you have. He said it takes longer than it should. He said most people only figure it out when it's almost too late to matter. He was right about most things. He was wrong about that one. I figured it out. It wasn't too late. The house is still in my name. The trust is structured correctly. My granddaughter is protected, and so is her future, and so is the memory of a man who believed that family was something you chose as much as something you were born into. My housekeeper is coming on Tuesday to do the garden properly. She said the thing along the back fence has gotten completely out of hand, and she's not wrong. I will make lunch. We will eat at the table by the window, the same table where I have eaten lunch for 31 years, and we will talk about the garden and probably not about any of this, because there is nothing left to say about it. Some things, once they are settled, stay settled. I have learned to be grateful for that. I've been thinking a lot about what it means to actually see someone clearly. Not the version of them you want to believe in, not the version they've worked to show you, but the real one, the one that only comes out when they think no one important is watching. My daughter-in-law had been performing for 11 years, and I had been a willing audience because I wanted to believe that my son had built something good, that he had chosen well, that the family we were becoming was the family I had hoped for. When you want something to be true badly enough, you find ways to explain away the small things. The comment that lands a little too hard, the question about the house that comes a little too soon after a funeral, the way her eyes moved when my granddaughter shook the dean's hand. I explained all of it away, and I am not ashamed of that exactly, but I am honest about it. What I've come to understand is that the people who betray us rarely do it all at once. They do it slowly, in increments, in the gaps between ordinary moments. And that's what makes it so hard to see, because each individual moment, taken alone, looks almost reasonable. It's only when you stand in a dark office and hear it said plainly without the performance that you understand what you've actually been looking at. My housekeeper saw it before I did. She saw it because she had no investment in not seeing it. She wasn't protecting a relationship or a family story. She was just watching, the way she always watches, and she saw what was real. There's something you need to see, trust me. Tell her blank. And they think about it often now. Integrity is not something people switch on when they think you're paying attention. It's either there all the time or it isn't there at all. My housekeeper followed them down that corridor, not because I had asked her to, not because there was anything in it for her, but because she thought I should know. That's it. That's the whole reason. And that kind of person, steady, unglamorous, consistent, is rarer than any of us remember to notice until the moment we need them most. My son is not a bad man. I want to be clear about that. But he had let someone else drive for long enough that he had forgotten what his own direction felt like. I hope the conversation we had stays with him. I hope he sits with it. Not because I want him to feel guilty. Guilt is not particularly useful on its own, but because I want him to choose better. Every day is an opportunity to choose better. That is not a small thing. My granddaughter is going to be all right. More than all right. She has the kind of character that was built quietly over years and is now simply there, solid, holding. She didn't ask me to protect her. She didn't even know she needed it. But that's the thing about doing the right thing. You don't always get to explain it at the time. Sometimes you just do it and the person understands later, and that's enough. I am 63 years old. I have buried a husband and outlasted a few versions of myself I thought were permanent. I know now that the most important decisions I have ever made were not made in moments of drama. They were made quietly, at kitchen tables, on ferry rides, in the offices of patient professionals who asked good questions. The loudest moments in life are rarely the ones that matter most. What matters is what you do after the noise stops.